we lack the career path still. I think in a lot of cases in our industry, we bring these drivers in, we orientate them, we pat them on the head, welcome them, put them in the truck, and then start feeding them freight. Right? And I don't think we look enough at the big picture about the actual career path that, maybe in 3 years or a year, whatever the matrix is, that individual can be considered as a driver trainer, or maybe he works in the driver finishing program. Maybe he has the ability to take the triple LC and become certified to be a trainer, to train some of their people. That driver could someday be your vice president of operations. I think we need to be a little bit more clear in the opportunities that are available within our organizations and create that path.
Well, I start by asking the question. Sometimes it gets overused, where do you want to be in 3 years as an interview question. But ask the question, because if they tell you, if their job is, hey, I want to be in the safety department, you may say, look, we've only got so many positions in there. And that might be true. But just know that if you're not working towards something, that person's going to leave. And so if you can compromise with them and say, hey, look, we don't have any positions now. Good to know that you're interested. Maybe in 3 years' time, we'll sit down and have that conversation and reassess. Let's be real. You're constantly hiring in the office as well. Get the majority of your folks are drivers, and some of them want to come in, some of them don't. But add that honest conversation with them. If you don't have a position for them now, where they want to go, maybe they don't ever want to leave the truck. And your point about being an instructor is valid, and it keeps them going and keeps your wheels running. More importantly, helps you build that next generation, your farm system of drivers.
An interesting point that you make about may want to continue being a driver all of his life, or her, and that's really true. I mean, if that's what they truly want to do and that's where their commitment level is, don't force the issue. Work with the people who want to further their career path, and those who are satisfied with the career path where they are, let them be there. I think when you take a look at today's rules of business engagement when it comes to hiring drivers and the orientation process, we've seen it change pretty rapidly the last few years, but I think there's plenty of room for change with that. One example that we've seen recently with one of our corporate customers is they've cut the orientation program down from 3 days to a day and a half. And they didn't cut it down to save money. They cut it down to be more efficient and more effective when they're recruiting. So some of their orientation is done online. And then when the online component is completed, then they come to the in-house orientation. But a lot of the nuts and bolts of the orientation is completed on their own time. I shouldn't say this, but this is happening. Some of those drivers are continuing to work for their companies and do that pre-orientation before they're leaving that company. But I mean, at the end of the day, if they're leaving the company, the big question is why. How many trucking companies are doing exit interviews? How many trucking companies are reaching out to their drivers that are leaving after 3 months or 60 days and sending them a letter and say, hey, it really hurts when you leave?
Well, let me one step further. Who's doing Who's doing stay interviews? Why don't we talk to the driver before?
I love that. Yeah.
Why don't we talk to the driver before it's an issue?
Yeah.
Quick surveys. To your point, set up quick text messages. How we doing today? Simple things of that nature. One of our clients is very structured in the first night. And what I would contend is orientation, is not the first day and a half or 3 days. That it's the first year that they're in the company.
Absolutely.
And what we see is from day one, how can you make it better? Well, hey, Kim, welcome to the company. Here's 67 pages of paper, the prenup. Sign this so we can fire you at any time we want, right? Welcome
back after my coffee.
Yeah, right. Welcome aboard, brother.
Yeah.
See you in a couple hours. Not a great way to welcome you onto the team.
No, and unfortunately, there's not a limited amount of examples of that. There's a ton of them.
So let's talk about that. So with an online application, you've already got most of that information.
Exactly.
So if you already have an online application, make sure whatever you're using regurgitates it over here and fill in the 4 things that's missing. We've had that example with our clients where it used to take 2 hours. Now it takes them 10 minutes. Now you got more time to show them the love, talk about the company, the values, what it's all about, and what your expectations are on the road.
This integration and the ability to utilize the technology that we have today, we need to embrace it in our industry, and anything that we can drill down to save time. Eventually, it's going to save money, but I don't think it can be at the expense of the driver.
Nope.
And I think there's a ton of tools out there, and then probably going to be a ton of tools developed for that. I'm going to call it the compassionate side that's needed in our industry. You know, at the end of the day, we all pull our pants on the same way. We're all people. We all deserve to be treated with the dignity and respect as a human being, and we sometimes lose sight of that over a load of freight. You know, I don't think there's enough education out there for the dispatchers or
We agree.
what's the other term for dispatcher?
Fleet manager,
Fleet manager,
driver
dispatcher,
manager,
driver
whatever it is.
manager, driver liaison.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a ton of work that could be done there.
So one other point on that of orientation of how you expand it over the year. We've got a client who does a phenomenal job. So on week 1, they've got a driver liaison, and they've got set questions that they ask on week 1. Then they have the call from the dispatcher. That's not just about freight; it's about how you're doing with check-ins. Again, set questions that they ask, you know, log, and it's tracked and reported on with someone that's combing through this all the time, looking for red flags of, whoa, we brought on Kim, and he last 3 calls have been, he doesn't appear to be. We can address it before it becomes an issue, right? And so they've got that call set up all the way for the first 6 months of employment. So they start heavy up front. And they start to tailor down because after once in a while you can only, you don't want to flood them.
Less touches.
But hey, you're still 6 months later, we're still talking about it.
And the ability for that person to reach out whenever and however. I mean, you know, you always hear the horror stories from leadership in our industry about, you know, oh, this driver's high maintenance. You know, I'd beg to differ to say that driver, that mobile profit center operator, that's high maintenance, is doing a hell of a job for the company, and all he needs is a little bit of communication and a little bit of thoughtfulness. Absolutely.